Hey y'all, it's me. Me not there again. Not feeling good still. But I'll be back to you guys Friday, Fridizzle. If you can, fill in the notes as I sort of kind of teach you what I can if I don't lose my voice through it. So basically we talked a little bit about the Middle Ages and how it transformed itself from this time of deterioration, political fragmentation, the loss of centralized power, and how the Catholic Church and Charlemagne, as a combined force, will create some sort of stability in Western Europe. And as the years go on, in the absence of money, you start to see that land becomes a valuable source of wealth. And the concept of feudalism will evolve. So feudalism, fancy for just people exchanging this promise of land for services or land and protection for food. And so we start to see that we have this structure, this feudal structure here. And at the end of this section of notes, you will have a choice at completing a questionnaire about this structure and analyzing what the triangle's purpose is and what feudalism really means, or the choice of the Crusades sheet, and then a bonus of a timeline. So anyway, as feudalism evolves, farming is definitely focused on as a means for survival. People do not leave the land as much. They don't leave the manor or the fief. That's where they are for their entire life, out of fear for survival on the outside. So as hundreds of years go on, again, a slow-moving change, we start to see a revolution. Now, when you think of the word revolution, a lot of people automatically think of violence, political change. But the word revolution, all it means is change. And that can happen scientifically. It can happen agriculturally. In this case, that's what it is. It's a change in farming. And so by the year 1000 CE, so this is like 500 years later after Rome falls, they have recovered. And new technologies start to appear in the field of farming. So you go from a wooden plow to an iron plow, and you think to yourself, well, what's the big deal there? Well, the plow does not break down as much, and it's more efficient, which means you'll get more, yep, you guessed it, food. You'll also have something called the three-field system. So you go from a two-field system to a three-field system. The word fallow means unused. Now, as they rotate year to year in the two-field system, 1 year you have that 50% not being used while the other one is. If you divide it into a three-field system of rotation, as you can see here, you now have less fallow land, which means you have more food. And an increase in food will lead to an increase of people. And I'm already exhausted. Teaching 3 minutes. If I go too quickly for you, you could pause this at any point, go back, rewind, fast forward, whatever you want to do. There's also a new harness. Again, all of these new technologies, whether you want to mention them specifically as the harness or the plow, it doesn't matter. What it is important to know is that there was an increase in food because the tools that they used to make food got better. Again, windmills help with people being able to produce food at other locations, not just having to live near the water. So look at all this long listing of consequences because of these new technologies. So you have new tools, which increases the amount of food. The increase of food leads to an increase of people. If there's more people around, you need more things for them so that they could live and survive. Now, an increase of these goods is going to lead to people having to go search for those goods, which means there's going to be an increase in trade, more people going to central locations that allow for trade, which means that there's urbanization going to happen, so the increase in cities, and then the economy's functioning. We got money back in the system, and so we see another revolution, another change, a commercial revolution. Now, when you watch a commercial, what is that commercial trying to get you to do? That's right, buy things. So if you break down the concept's commercial revolution, it's just a change in the way things are bought and sold. And how are those things changed? Well, we go from a feudal system where there's no money to now money reappearing. So people have not only coins or standardized monies to buy things, but they also have capital, which is money for investment, which means we can start to see the building and production of businesses, corporations. That's later down the line, but again, this is changing the process at which it changes. So we see a middle class reappearing. No longer do we see that huge section of the triangle be the serfs, right? So we're starting to see a middle class developing. People are getting together and forming businesses where they wouldn't be able to on their own. They are using checks instead of cash because they're traveling far distances and they don't want to carry their cash on them. If you look at today's world, the way we've bought and sold things has changed within the past 20 years. You guys might not realize this, but for me, I see it. How often do people really carry cash on them now? Not often, because they have it in their phones or they have it on this thing of Venmo. My sister-in-law wants me to use it all the time. I can't stand it, but it's Venmo. Anyway, credit cards. Look at Amazon. Amazon has completely changed the way things are bought and sold. It's driven competitors to the ground. It's encouraged other competitors to deliver things within 2 days. There's a lot of different things happening. Anywho, other changes to the way things are being exchanged. You have these groups that at first would maybe compete against each other, now working together as a union, which will later be called these guilds, or again, labor unions. So instead of competing against each other or driving each other out, they set prices to work together so they can make money together. Even the workers there, so they have some sort of a fair workplace, business-like, honorable structure. And within these unions, you may have people called like apprentices or journeymen or master craftsmen, and this is the process by which you learn a trade or a skill or a craft, and over the years you increase your status of intellect for that. Now, of course, with all these changes and all of this movement towards the cities, because they want to trade more, city life changes. We see a lack of cleanliness. We see a lack of regulation in sewer. So people are throwing their excrement, their urine, out the windows into the roads. There's garbage everywhere. There's no respect for nature as far as the water goes. People get sick and will eventually get to the plague. So we see a rise in cities. So overall, again, what did we just talk about? We saw an increase in population leading to an increase of goods, and then trade, and then skills, and then urbanization. And all of these trade routes that had disappeared during the Dark Ages are now starting to reappear. They're starting to get reused because the risk of surviving out there increased. Like your survival rates increased. You were more safe, not completely, than you were when there were barbarian groups roaming. Outside of agricultural tools and methods advancing, so did the military weapons. So we started to see catapults, crossbows, and this is all to counteract the effectiveness of a castle. Eventually, despite the crossbows and the longbows and the catapults, the introduction of gunpowder to Europe will annihilate completely why they had castles. So this will end an age of castle building, castle making, and people running to the castle for safety. I know there is a thing on medieval scholasticism or medieval culture. We'll get back to that when I get back because I want to talk to you more in depth about it. And also the Crusades, which is what I'm going to speak to you on briefly right now. So by the year 1095, we see the changes agriculturally, commercially, but we're also going to start to see a pivot towards culture power throughout Afro-Eurasia. So we see the Muslims gaining momentum, we see the Byzantine Empire falling, we see the Middle Ages kind of hitting a peak where they're going towards their height. And needless to say, despite all of that, there still is a prominent city named Jerusalem that everybody wants. And at the time, the Byzantine Empire had owned it, but they knew that the Islamic caliphates were making their way towards annexing, taking that land. And so the Byzantine Empire will at first ask the Pope on the western side for help. So the Eastern Orthodox Christians will say, hey, yo, Catholics, we need your help. And the Catholics are going to be like, nah, B, you're on your own. And so the Byzantine Empire will lose Jerusalem to the Islamic caliphates. And that's when the Pope finally takes it upon himself to encourage the Catholics to involve themselves in getting this Jerusalem back. So Pope Urban II at the time says, we as Catholics, good Christians, need to go and try to get that Holy Land back for God and take it away from the Muslims. Now, the reality is we've learned that whether you're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, you are all brothers of the same book. So why are they fighting over Jerusalem? And we still don't have that answer, but possibly, a selfish greed might have something to do with it. So now, what's behind this moment of going to get Jerusalem back? Why would the Pope do this? Okay, yeah, maybe he wants the city for himself, but also, in the back of his mind, he might see, maybe we can increase the church's power somehow, reunite both Christian sects. That's a possibility. So he encourages these people to go out on this crusade, and some men who agree to go on this crusade also see some good things in going. Maybe they'll be able to travel. There's a promise of them getting their own piece of land from the church. Their sins might be erased. They'll go automatically to heaven. So this concept here of the Crusades is the same exact concept that we were talking about when we learned about the jihad for Muslims. Please keep that in mind. And again, I'll go back to this. I'll re-explain a lot of this, but this is the main components of the Crusades. Now, if you're a history buff, you know that the Crusades is an epic failure for the Christians. And it's mostly for these reasons that you see here. But historians have viewed the Crusades as the most successful failure that Europe has had. And what success could you see in this failure of getting Jerusalem back? Well, remember, Europe was in a dark period. Europe was not embarking upon expeditions beyond Western Europe. This crusade was the first big moment, the first big event that the Europeans had an opportunity to wake up out of their slumber. And so here they go out to all these cities that had preserved the learning that they had once lost. So as the Byzantines preserved the Greco-Roman laws and the architecture, the Western Europeans, they see that on their route to the Crusades. As the Western Europeans go to Jerusalem and into the lands that the Muslims captured, they see the learning that the Muslims had preserved and the advancements that they made in science and literature and medicine and math. So when the Europeans who survived this come back to Europe, they bring with them not only knowledge of these achievements and this learning, but also some yummy food, spices. And this is going to lead us to the age of exploration. And that's a nice map for you. I'll see you Friday. Good luck. Bye-bye.